Founders are the biggest pain in the ass because we bottleneck everything because we don't want to let go of anything. I was postpartum with my second child and I had a really classic postpartum midlife crisis. Most people suck at developing customers. Hi, I'm Jess Hatzis. I've built over $1 billion worth of consumer brands, and on today's episode of Add to Cart, I talk about the less obvious levers to growth.
Hey, it's Rosa here, and today we are having a deep and good old conversation with brand guru Jess Hatzis of Willow and Blake and Frank Body.
Bushy here as well. Thanks for introducing me, Rosa. Pleasure to be on my own podcast.
Yeah, it's so nice to have you in the background on this one, Bushy. But yeah, I'm really excited about this one. I didn't realize that Willow and Blake, their copywriting and creative agency, was behind so many different brands. Did you know that?
I'm a massive fanboy. Their campaign last year with Bouf, we talk about it a bit on this episode. I think they rewrote a lot of rules with that one and caught my attention, as you can see from my luscious hair.
Yeah, I reckon. A Bouf boy. Look at that. But yeah, it's huge. And now to see that they're not just doing it from inception and hearing her take kind of that startup mentality over to bets as well. So it's going to be a really good conversation and a lot of gold in there for people who like intuitive marketing, but also really need to rely on data for those slim margins. So yeah.
Absolutely. Most of our listeners will know Jess and her co-founder Brie from establishing the brand Frank Body, which was the coffee scrub. I can't say that I ever tried it myself, but had some of the most amazing marketing and brand treatment. And I can actually see a lot of correlation to what you've built with Crocked between the two brands. So I was fascinated to have you on this conversation, Rosa, when we're talking all things brand. Should we get into it?
Let's get into it.
All right, before we do, let's thank our sponsors. Thank you so much to Shopify and to Klaviyo for bringing us all these episodes of Add to Cart. To have this free content brought to you by them every week is something that I feel very proud to do. And we're forever grateful for them sponsoring us. Here's Jess. Jess, welcome to Add to Cart.
Oh, thanks, guys. I'm glad to be here.
So good to have you here. Rosa, lovely to have you back.
I know, I just pop in every now and then.
Just lady of leisure, just popping in whenever you want.
The listeners never know when I'm going to be here and when I'm not, but surprise, it's a good one. I'm here.
I'm excited to have you both here for this episode because I can't think of two better people to talk brand and creativity than you both. Jess, we've had the pleasure of sharing a stage a few times, and I always love hearing from you. You always kind of challenge my idea of what a good brand looks like, and that's evolved so much. But look, big news from you over the last year. Your other baby, Frank Body, you've stepped away from Frank Body from what I've read, and you feel like you've got 1,000 different things going on. Where's your head at right now? What are you doing?
Constant chaos over here, Nate. Yeah, right. I was ready for a new challenge. I'd been at Frank for, 13 years by that point, or something like that. It was a long time. I don't know many people my age that have been working in the same job or the same business for that long. So like everyone else, even as a founder, you kind of get itchy feet and you're ready to go back to the start and build something from scratch again. And at the end of the day, that's what I love doing. My career is in ideas and I love being at the start, and I'm better at that, if I'm honest. There are better people who are better suited to do the day-to-day execution than I am. I get itchy feet. I need to go on and do something else. So focus back on my very first business, Willow and Blake, with my business partner, Brie. We launched a business advisory out of there called Prescale, which works with consumer brands and advising them across the full holistic elements of running their business and trying to grow it profitably. And then I took on a fractional CMO at large and shareholder position at Bet's Shoes, which has been a whole different set of challenges and really exciting times.
And that's quite interesting, right? Because they've taken, what you've just said, that you prefer to come in at the start. It's like Betts has recognized that they need that fresh perspective again. So it's almost like now you're doing the reverse, but a brand that's been around for isn't it over 100 years or something?
Yeah. Betts will be 134 years.
Holy moly.
This year. So it's one of the oldest consumer brands in Australia, female founded, 5th generation run. What I liked about that was I've spent a lot of time either building brands from scratch or working with brands that need to reinvigorate but don't necessarily know how or what to do. And I was very specific about the projects that I wanted to take on after Frank. And I loved the heritage element of Betts. Most people, I'm 40, who are my age, would think about bets and remember it from their childhood. Oh yeah, I feel like I bought school shoes there. And like a lot of brands who had to do everything to navigate and survive the last sort of, especially for bets, like you think back to GFC and then COVID, like they've, retail brands have been it's going through storm after storm, and they acquire all these bolt-on elements of the business. And so it was really nice to work really collaboratively with the family and Mike, the CEO, to develop what the business and brand strategy looked like moving forward and then roll that out over the last 12 months. And they've been so open to change. And it was a big swing. We better not fuck this up. Jess can't be the person that comes in and just with this 134
This
year
thing's
old
been
brand.
going for 130 years. It's on you.
But I'm very proud to say that we've, the rebrand and the repositioning of the product and all of the changes that we made around the business have been really well received. So yeah, it's been a very exciting and rewarding project.
What excited you about that? Because I look at some of the work that you're doing with Willow and Blake, and it's really cool. It's fun. It's, the Bouf hair care. Is that how you say it? Bouf?
Yeah, Bouf. Rach, the founder of York Street Brands, is an incredible mind. And we worked with her to develop the entire brand. So naming, brand concept, visual directions, campaign, etc., brand strategy. And that was incredible. That business launched and did 500K in its first week. And credit needs to go to York Street Brands and Hive PR. Like, they were incredible. So yeah, look, I like working at both ends of the spectrum. Like, that ability to do something really disruptive in a category is exciting and have no real rules. But so is being very strategic about the creative that builds a brand and a brand world. And that's what excited me about bets. Working within certain constraints, having to reposition the way people think about something rather than just beginning to start with a clean slate. That's the type of challenge that I look for at this stage of my career. So I loved that.
So can we just unpack? So you wrapped up with like Frank Body a year ago. Did you just already have all these other projects going, or was there a part of you, like you have 2, 3 kids as well, young kids?
Yeah, I've got 2 kids, so they're 5 and 2. And I would
Rosa's just giving you another one, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
catch my husband about that.
Yeah, I want you to take mine.
I'll babysit. I was postpartum with my second child, and I had a really classic postpartum midlife crisis. I felt ready to move on from Frank. I'll always be so grateful for what we did at Frank. And to be able to exit with the founders was really lovely. But prior to the exit, I stepped back from my role for about a year. So it's been 2-ish years since I was involved in the business in a day-to-day capacity. I was still sitting on the board of directors for a period of time. But I felt ready for a new challenge. That business was so set. Everyone knew what it was, and there was no redevelopment required. It was very much in rollout and grow mode, which, as I said at the start, there are people better suited to do that than me. I get a bit bored. Yeah. And I felt like I was at the point in time where I also didn't, I say this with all respect, I didn't enjoy the people management side of my role as much anymore. And people deserve a leader that is loving that side of things. Like, they deserve that. And that wasn't me. I wanted to be more in the tools and, developing the strategy and doing the ideation. And when you become it, like, when you're at exec level, you're just firefighting and people managing and budget planning all day. So it forced me to take a step back. And I did a bit of a hodgepodge of things throughout that year while I was on leave. I took a lot more time off work. I didn't rush back like I did with my first child in whatever capacity you can. I mean, you're still breastfeeding on director calls and,
Still busy.
Still pretty busy, but 8 hours of meetings a day. Yeah. So I stepped back and I started doing some coaching and consulting with businesses, and I really loved that. I've always enjoyed helping founders achieve their goals, and that next generation of founders coming through, there's 20 and 30-year-olds who have these ideas, and I can see a lot of my younger self in them. Mm-hmm. And I want to help people avoid the mistakes that I made or that we made within our businesses. So I was doing that in a one-on-one capacity. And if I'm honest, it was the same set of 5 problems coming up over and over and over again, no matter the business, no matter the founder. And that's where the idea for Scale came from. We'd launched it prior to that under a different name called Of Course. We launched that in 2023. Yes, my business partner, Brie, and I. That was a series of courses where it could help people focus on brand building, tone of voice, strategy, creative. And what I always wanted to do was add an in-person element to that. But I was 7 months pregnant when we launched that business. That wasn't the time to launch in-person meetups. So we had to put a pin in it, and we decided to relaunch the in-person cohort part when I came back from that leave. So it was nice to kind of dip my toe in a one-on-one capacity and really get a feel for what people needed. So I'd finished doing that and I thought, well, I could do this in a group setting because it's the same issues time and time again. And that can allow me to meet with more people. So Brie and I brought on Emma and Kate, who are ex-Frank Green, Cheat Society, Nike Rationale, brilliant e-commerce performance minds. And that was very complimentary to us because I'm not the expert in performance marketing. I'm a brand expert. And obviously, as we have chatted about prior to hitting record button, performance, the necessary evil of doing business these days.
There were a few F words dropped.
Performance and people, can we not?
Yeah.
It's so integral to doing business well, but there's a lot of really poor operators out there. And I've gotten in the back end of some accounts and not even being the performance expert can see what a shit show it is and a real lack of respect to the art of brand building within the performance ecosystem. And that's what Kate and Emma do so well. So our skill set came together really well. So we've worked together across a few things. They're also the performance team that helped turn around the Titanic size business that is Bets. And Em and I have worked across quite a few projects. So for scale, they're also the team that helped reposition Bets with me as our performance marketing agency. And really our goal together was to help as many consumer brands as we could. So it was this sort of path that led me into exploring what it looked like to consult for other businesses. And that was how I met Mike, who's the CEO of Bets, at a conference. And everything I was saying was exactly what he was looking for. He knew something needed to shift within the business, had a lot of strong ideas himself about what that should be, and had led the e-commerce, I guess, well, really kicking off the e-commerce project in Bets, because historically the business had been a little bit behind the 8 ball to establish e-com. And we worked together to kind of take it into that next phase. So it was, it was a bit of a journey to get where I am. Yeah. It kind of happened somewhat organically over the last 2 years. Got back to my writing roots a lot, which was really nice to kind of.
I love your Substack.
Oh, thanks. Look, I've been really quiet on there for the last few months because I haven't had capacity to write anything of any substance. But it was nice. I found it was helpful for people and cathartic for myself.
Totally.
There's always that question. I'm curious to hear what you say to this. I don't know if it's a bit of a criticism, but around founders who turn to coaching or to education, and you constantly hear it through the industry as like, if you're so good at developing all these brands, why don't you just create more brands and make millions of dollars? Why are you teaching others?
Why do people do it?
Yeah.
Then I don't have to deal with the shit show of running and operating a business.
Because it's fucking hard.
Really hard. I think there's two camps. I think there are people who have always been motivated by the idea of helping other people. And I've mentored and coached in some capacity throughout my entire 20 years of my career. And it was a way that I felt like I could have that people element without being responsible for their entire day to day. So that's what I loved about it. And my life motto is a rising tide lifts all boats. So for me, it was so intrinsic to who I am. I want to see other founders succeed. I've had, founder meetups, WhatsApp groups with brands that people would see as competitive. Like we had a whole skincare WhatsApp group, and it was, the founders of all these really well-known Australian brands coming together going, right, are you having this problem? We're having that problem. Let's help each other get through it, because no one is brand agnostic. I owned the brand, for God's sake, and I would buy other skincare brands. Why on earth would I think that my consumers wouldn't? So we can all grow and learn together. But then I think, Nath, you're right. Like there's a lot of people who go into it for potentially the wrong reasons. They see it as a way to make a lot of money from founders who are stressed and vulnerable. And then I think there's the camp who go, right, I know how operationally challenging this is. It's a 24-hour-a-day job. I still love consumer brand, but I want to be involved in a different way. And I think that's through down the coaching path. So I think there's all these different reasons, and there's different coaches. And, I think we attract different types of brands too. We find we have a lot of female founders come to us because there aren't that many female coaches out there.
No, I'm part of three. I'm part of three communities. I'm in Bushies community. I'm in Daily Mentor. I'm in e-commerce equation now. And yeah, it's so true. I think what you were saying about having 12 years dedicated to Frank Body as well, like there's just, you get so much knowledge that you're like, you must have reached a point of not wanting to pour it all back into Frank, but then you have nowhere else to put it. And like the energy that you need to start something again from ground zero, like when you've done it, you then realize, okay, I'm not at that stage of life. Once you have kids and life just moves on, I'm not at that stage of life where I want to do this myself again, but I do want to help other people. And I think it's really cool that you aren't just like hoarding that knowledge and sitting on it. I'm really interested to hear you say that, okay, it's the same problems that you keep seeing consumer brands having again and again. Like, what do you think when it comes to branding or just positioning, what do you think those common problems are? You guys are hoping to jump in and help fast track that people can figure it out in 2 years rather than 12.
Yeah, look, it's really common across our Willow and Blake clients and for scale clients, Nathan, you would see this with people you work with too, lack of understanding around what the true white space is and how to properly differentiate their brand or product. Honest with themselves about the fact that there isn't anything particularly ownable about the product. Therefore, how do we create something ownable with the brand? That requires a real level of self-awareness, a removal of ego from the conversation. And not everybody is ready or willing to have that type of conversation. But when you are, that unlocks a huge amount of growth because you go, right, I still love my product. It doesn't mean the product's bad. It just means it might be one of 4 other products that are very similar. How do we create that white space or find that white space? How do we then develop really strong customer personas off the back of that? And most people suck at developing customer personas.
Especially big consultancies.
Oh, Jesus Christ. And she's 24 to 34. I don't exist in any like consumer boxes anymore. I turned 40 and I fell off a cliff. No one targets me anymore. I have more disposable income than I've ever had in my entire life. Why are you not targeting me?
Oh, God, you don't want to see the ads that I get on Facebook.
Oh, what are they? Tell me.
Honestly, it's all about gut exercises. And I'm like,
I'm
come
sorry.
on, give me a break. It's
Yeah.
not that bad.
You're like, it's okay, I'm a talking head. No one sees my gut.
That's why I film from the chest up.
It's pretty fun.
Booty prides itself on making some of the most comfortable underwear on the planet. Soft, breathable, no bothersome seams. But behind the scenes, their marketing stack, well, it was a lot less comfortable. As Booty scaled across Australia, the UK and the US, customer data was scattered across email tools, on-site forms and paid platforms. Getting clear insights, let alone taking action, was slow, clunky, and as pleasant as a wedgie on a hot summer's day. So they simplified everything and unified their channels in Klaviyo. With one view of the customer, Booty could finally understand how people browse, abandon, and buy, and then trigger personalized messages across email, on-site paid, and SMS without adding more tools or manual work. The result, an 87 times ROI from Klaviyo year to date, a 10% lift in retention year on year, and a 34% increase in high intent customers in just 90 days. Turns out, when your marketing platform is as comfortable as your product, growth feels a whole lot better. If your stack is causing friction, head to klaviyo.com/au and see how brands like Booty are scaling comfortably. But I hear you. Customer personas. I want to hear about the problems first, and then we might pick up a few of these to dive into to understand and how you approach them.
Yeah, so look, developing strong customer personas, and then if we want to go into the performance and acquisition space, what are really strong hooks and messages that are actually going to resonate with that customer, and how do we carry that journey through from the awareness phase onto side into conversion? Then there's a lot of issues I see around team structure, founder structure. So I've worked with businesses that are, one woman or one man operating the entire thing and wearing 800 different hats and really unsure how to prioritize. So we focus very much on prioritization skills. And then on the other side, there's a founder who's grown it to $30 or $50 million worth of revenue, but they still don't have the right team structure around them. They can't take a step back and rebuild the team from scratch. It doesn't mean getting rid of the people. It means reshuffling the way the people come together on the board, and letting go of reins is a big one. Founders are the biggest pain in the ass because we bottleneck everything, because we don't want to let go of anything because we're scared that we'll break it or that other people will break it. But then we self-sabotage, and it's like this self-fulfilling prophecy because we can't get out of our own way.
But is that also the secret to success, is like giving a damn and like being in the detail and driving that?
To the point where, yes, you have to be across some element of detail, but I think you can still achieve that by having really strong brand culture, onboarding people really well, having very clear KPIs and expectations for a role, what reviewing work looks like, creating a psychologically safe workspace where people can come to you and say, hey, I didn't do this well and I want to understand why. That can mean there's 10 of you rather than just one of you bottlenecking everything at the top. And that took me a long time to learn, because you get used to doing everything yourself, and to let go and trust other people is really scary. It was a big part of why Bets could have such a phenomenal turnaround in such a short period of time. We only launched that rebrand in October. So it's really only been in market for 6 months. And for a brand to go from basically irrelevant with a particular consumer cohort, say mid-20s, to now actual virality across TikTok. That's bananas. And that could only happen because I trusted the team. Like I onboarded them with the vision. I was literally doing everything myself at the start because I didn't have a team around me. I was rebuilding the team with the right people. But then as soon as they were in, I'm like, great, I've onboarded you. You understand this. Come to me with every problem you have. But otherwise, you have free reign. Go for it.
Love it.
You have to trust people to do their job. And they did it really well.
Can we run, like, because I love those examples that you gave around common problems. And I know we're talking about founders, but I think Bets is a great example too of just applying it to any brand. If you talk about finding your fit in market, finding that white space, defining your personas, knowing your hooks and your messages, how did you come up with that for Bets? Because obviously with such a rich heritage in that brand, a lot of those would be pretty set. How did you pick that up and move it?
Yeah, it was a big data analysis project. So that's the not sexy side of branding. You have to spend your time in the numbers, and the numbers will tell you what needs to change. That's what I've always considered to be the really big commercial difference at Willow and Blake. Because we've been consumer brand operators, our recommendations are built on insight, not just me going, this looks nice, let's go in that direction. So I spent about 2 months reviewing every piece of data I could get my hands on. What it showed me was that there was a very price sensitive consumer who wasn't particularly loyal to the brand. Purchase rate was nowhere near where we needed to see it being. Full price trade was really difficult for the brand. And because it was all driven by a lack of cohesiveness in the creative that was pushed through only one channel. So every eggie was in one basket. And I don't like all my eggies in one basket. I like eggies in multiple different baskets. So it was really driven by performance marketing. And there was a very unholistic view as to what that performance marketing impacted across the board of business. So I could see that if we kept going down that path, we were going to be paying for customers and eventually we were going to run out of customers to pay for. So I needed to just take a step back and go, right, how do I acquire a stickier customer? Who has more propensity to purchase from us more than one time? Who's going to purchase at full price? Who's going to talk to their friends more about the product and create that kind of social virality and word of mouth that we're looking for? And it wasn't in the current customer set that they had. And that hadn't filtered through to any of their acquisition strategies yet, nor especially not the creative in the brand. And then it also had a big ripple effect on product. So to bring the entire business along on this journey, I sat down with all the shareholders and took them through my thinking, the analysis, what I'd found, where it led me, who I thought our new customers should be, how we still maintain the older, by older, I mean like the legacy customer that wants to be part of the brand, but how we get comfortable with letting go of the customer who isn't adding as much long-term value to the business. So that meant removing school shoes, it meant removing men's, it meant halving the SKU count. You know, we had like 700 products in market and we needed to reduce it to say 250, 300 annually. And that was a massive shift for them because this brand was built on school shoes. And now I was sitting there going, kill them.
How'd that conversation go down? You're like, I've just rolled in here and I know you've been doing school shoes for 130 years, but we probably shouldn't anymore.
It was fine because it was backed by research. And I think that's the key. I don't believe in the sentence, I feel and I believe sitting in the boardroom, unless it's so relevant to the topic. It should be the numbers show us or the research shows us. Therefore, here is the recommendation. And everything was based, like the conversation was rooted in that type of insight.
Where are you getting your research around prospective customers? Because obviously really easy to analyze existing customers, probably less so in a physical retail environment, but definitely in e-commerce, very easy. What about understanding customers who you don't know who they are or what they might be? Where do you get that data from?
Look, a lot of it is acquired data over time because I do this for a living. So I spend all day, every day looking at consumer brand data. So I don't look at things in a silo. I would never only consider what the consumers of competitor shoe brands are doing because she doesn't just walk around naked and wear shoes and not eat any food and not do her hair. Like she
Sounds like you found your persona.
found my persona, naked shoes. They're everywhere. Right. So I look at what's going on across every category. I look at how people are responding to certain messages. I spend time, some of it is very like qualitative data points. So you spend time in comment sections across a variety of different brands. And I spend time reading reviews on sites. There's tons of annual reports that I read, which are really helpful. There are research papers around that are really helpful. So I look at a really broad spectrum of information points to help me make decisions. And so that's what our team do as well. So I think that's the key. And then as much as I said, I don't think that I believe and I feel should be part of the conversation, I would be lying if I said there isn't an element of gut instinct in what we do. It just has to be validated by the numbers.
Why there's like room and a need for people like you at the table, because there is a huge part of marketing which is intuitive, and it's the intuitive marketers who can pair it with data that then are going to be the ones who are proactive rather than reactive, which that's to this date were probably reactive in their marketing, seeing what was happening in the market and copying peers, and then that's the blind leading the blind and so on. I want to almost talk about like, because these personas, these customer personas, they wouldn't actually be that different to when you had Frank Body and you were going after the millennial, which is really now like the Gen Z. The same
Back
need
when we were cool.
back when we were cool. And I want to talk about like how the customer persona can stay the same, yet what used to work for Frank to be edgy, cool, and super relevant, why that wouldn't work today. Because just a tiny bit of context. So my brand Crocked is in pottery, and we very much looked at Frank. That was a huge inspiration to us. I think in the very early days, I inquired at Willow and Blake, and we just couldn't afford it at the time. But it was that polarizing edginess, that brand that kind of really shocked people in a way, but then still felt playful. But what I've noticed 6 years in is it's not the same. I can't play with the same brand playbook anymore. It's really hard to maintain an edgy, cheeky brand in today's space unless it's a person behind it, which we were never founder facing. I know you guys weren't founder facing. But to get to those personas, that kind of Gen Z, younger millennial maybe audience, what do you think wouldn't work today that worked for Frank? Like, what are you not recommending that maybe you used to?
It's a really good question. I don't think that there is a playbook I wouldn't recommend. I think that it's certain things work for certain businesses at certain periods in time. The reason it worked for Frank, the landscape has shifted around us. So consumer brands back then, well, firstly, like DTC consumer brands didn't even really exist. So we were one of the first beauty brands in that space. And our competitors were Dove, Nivea, The Body Shop, etc. Bland, very vanilla, huge corporate entities that never really wanted to take a risk on anything and often played to women's insecurities. For us, it was based on a gut instinct as to what we were looking for in consumer brands. We were very bored by what was happening in the category, and also an insight that people were shifting to this way of communicating. So therefore, the brands that they're going to interact with will also shift to that way of communicating. It was an element of the right place, right time, but also the way that you use the product. It's sort of, you could connect it to something a little bit more edgy. You were naked in the shower using the product. If there was ever a time for sexual innuendo, that was it. Transferring it to pottery, crockery, not so much. Which is why it doesn't work in certain categories. And that's where you might need to lean into cues that are a bit more refined or about connection and shared experiences that happen around the product. And so we take a really different approach. We don't have a house style at Willow and Blake, because if we had a house style, we wouldn't be doing our job well. Every brand that we build is so different. So you've got really polished B2B communications in one brand, then you've got ultra emotional based around connectivity for a brand like PureMama, whose campaign we just launched. Then, on the other hand, you're leaning into nostalgia and trying to conjure up feelings of like family and childhood memories, which we just did for Lepure's new campaign. Then you have something like Beck's, where it's going into heritage and it's talking about the richness of something that's old. And what I identify there was not only is it felt really obvious, like don't try and be a new modern brand. Like every brand is trying to fake heritage and you actually have heritage. So let's lean into that and make it feel really genuine. But Gen Z also have, whether they want to admit it or not, a huge fascination with everything nostalgic. It's just ironic that they weren't alive the first time, so it's not actually nostalgia to them. But, because they're seeking connection, because so much of their life has been lived through a screen, and so many of their formative years, that opportunity for connection was taken away from them because of things like COVID. So it's not at all a criticism. It's just an observation of a generation that are looking for things that have a bit more meaning in them. And so giving them a brand that they could interact with, that it's like, hey, there is meaning here. This thing's been around for 134 years. Your great-great-grandmother would have worn these shoes.
It's vintage.
It's vintage, babe.
Do you think it's also playing into influencer fatigue? Is there a little bit of like, I like these heritage brands because they've been around for so long, they've seen some things, they've built this story up, And yes, influencers aren't going away, but instead of this random person who's got 3 million followers telling me what's cool, I actually like to hear it from someone with a bit of expertise or credentials.
I'm really particular with the influencers that we work with. I have never found influencers with, millions of followers to be particularly great at awareness or conversion. So we were very particular with wanting to work with people who had strong fashion credentials, because for us it was about getting people to see the brand through that light, not sort of a mass shoe or not the school shoe or not where the mum would go and buy the dad's boot for the season, her shoe and the kids' school shoe. It's like, this is a fashion destination. You're going to get trends that are straight off the runway at a commercially friendly price here. So therefore we need to partner with people that we can borrow that clout from. And we wanted them to be repeat engagements. It was about bringing all of those influences together. So there was this real sense of community and we could establish strong relationships with people, because that hasn't changed. Good influencer marketing has always been about building really strong relationships with influencers. And so that was what we did at Frank. It's what we were doing at Betts. It's what we've done with every brand in between, and not just throwing your money here, there, and everywhere, but also having realistic expectations for what influencer marketing does. Every now and then you find a unicorn that immediately translates to sales, but otherwise I think about it as a frequency effect. It's about, the same way as putting billboards up. I wouldn't put one billboard up in one random suburb and expect that it's going to sell all of my product. Influencers are living, breathing billboards online. And so you need to have multiple engagements. People need to see something half a dozen times before they're actually going to care. It needs to come from half a dozen credible sources, each with their own unique spin on things.
The market is shifting, costs are climbing, and the pressure to do more with less is very real. But when resources are tight, you can rely on Shopify, the platform that's consistently first with new capabilities. Shopify invests significantly in R&D and drops more than 150 updates every year, evolving with you and absorbing complexity so that you can focus on what moves your business forward. From AI-powered insights to the world's best converting checkout, Shopify is designed for the next era of commerce, helping you sell more, scale faster, and future-proof your brand. Build for what is next with Shopify. Visit Shopify for Enterprise to learn more.
Can I you to talk to this point of clout a little bit more? Because I think that's really interesting what you just touched on about your product needing to be seen, not just this where we started, which was user generated content. I'm going into Betts today to buy my hubby's like blah, 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 whatever. But I saw still that you guys are very present. So you and Bree, and I guess your house of brands that you help to collaborate with, are present in like IRL events and influence events in that way. Is that where the shift is going? And it's more about influencers that are like real, they're doing things that give us FOMO, because being at your home and unboxing, it's no longer something like, oh, I wish that was me, but seeing people at events and like Coachella style events and so on. Like, I just want to hear from you, like, is that where you're seeing like a shift in working with influencers? Is it moving to in person, or is that just in my algorithm that I'm seeing?
It's a really great pickup. And I think that brands who are wanting to be part of the cultural zeitgeist have been going in that direction for quite a while. We did a lot of eventing at Frank, and I always wanted those events to feel really different. So every now and then, a lunch style event, which is beautiful and curated, makes sense because you're trying to create an experience that feels refined or reposition something. At Frank, I was like, never do I want to have everyone sitting around a table with a bunch of florals, because that was so off brand for us. So we would instead invite influencers to like the Smash Room, where they were breaking beauty standards. They'd be in jumpsuits and they'd be beating the shit out of crockery with baseball bats. And it was about rewriting the narrative about what it means to live in the skin that you're in. And then at Willow and Blake, we run a lot of events. So it's really the only type of outward marketing that we do is bringing together tastemakers, decision makers, strategists all in one room and having thought-provoking conversations. So they're often centered around some kind of panel or keynote presentation. The last one that we ran was called How Women Shop, with Edwina McCann, who's the editor of Vogue, a woman called Michaela, who's head of brand and marketing at Afterpay, and myself and Bree. And it was a conversation with all women in the room, all women on the panel, about how women shop, what is making them tick. And so it was really quite insightful and really community driven, and people came together from all sorts of fashion brands, but were having conversations like I touched on at the start. The competitive nature was gone. It was just, here's what's working, here's what's not, this is a shit show, this is great, have you tried that? And that's what I like about the in-person element, because you kind of get past the surface level BS that holds people back from growth.
And it feels like that's the genuine influence again. Like I look at that and I'm like, that's where the influence is happening. Like you said it perfectly with tastemakers. Like from the outside, from a consumer, you look at that and you think like, what are they talking about? What's the trends that are going to come out of this? What direction are these people like genuinely influencing? So did you mean to say eventing before? Like marketing, is that a term?
Yeah, we call it eventing.
That's so interesting. So there's like, okay, there's your performance marketing and then there's your eventing.
Not to be confused with venting, which I also do frequently.
Yeah. You can do both at the same time.
Do both. Wine and wine, that's what I call that.
Yeah. I like that. I've got to ask you though, on that event, I love that topic. Was there anything that the rest of us should know around how women shop that you picked up through that event that?
Sure is. We actually have a whole report I could send you.
How convenient.
Yeah, so I'll flick it your way. Cherry pick what you want. Yeah, we're preparing another one now around Mother's Day, and we're running another one for scale in maybe 4 weeks, which is very much like for founders by founders, this kind of founders unfiltered philosophy. Again, if I bring people together, it's because I want them to share real, honest stories. And yes, there's an element of inspiration, but also actual practical takeaways. Like, what can people go away from this event and implement tomorrow and maybe make a meaningful change in their business? So I'm a big fan of it. Also, if I'm really honest, from a monetary standpoint, if you're a consumer brand looking to engage influencers, typically a lot more cost effective to run an event, because each individual influencer, if you're looking to work with anyone of kind of any real standing that's separate from a creator, they're very expensive to engage. You might have to pay fees for some people to come to an event, but often you don't if you have the right creative and the right experience that they're looking to get involved with. So you get a ton of content out of it. You build a real relationship, and it usually costs you 1/10 that it would have to engage each of those people individually. So it ticks so many boxes.
That's such a hack. I love that. I think that's such a hack because you're also playing to the influencers' need to create content for their own channels anyway. And they know they're going to like a visually nice merchandised event, and there's going to be other creators there whose clout they can jump on. And it's just like one big
strappy family. That's
I
what
love it. So I feel like that's such a hack for our listeners, Bushy, to like properly think about events and eventing. Let's make that thing.
Is this the part where you plugged Croc Studios as a great place to host your events? I see where you're going. It's very transparent.
I actually, honestly, if our studios weren't so bloody booked all the time, then maybe we'd have more room for events.
La-di-da. Jess, I'm really keen to pick your brain on something that you picked up about before. And I've heard you talk about the brand strategy being the invisible architecture of a business. When you talk about brand, it can be so wide reaching. Like we've talked about everything from finding your market position through to colors, fonts, influencers, the whole lot, right? For people who are considering their brand, does it always have to be a big lift and shift, or can you do brand incrementally?
In an absolute ideal world, it's a big lift and shift, I think, because you can have a more meaningful impact on the end consumer. It feels more memorable, but there is also risk involved with that approach. So not just the financial layout that is going to be associated with doing something like that, but if you don't get it right, and this is where bringing experts in is so critical. If you don't get it right, you might not have a business 6 months later because you've gone in the wrong direction. You've alienated your core customer whilst failing to acquire a new customer. So working with experts is really key, whether that's agencies or internals. Just if you're not a brand expert as a founder, don't do that alone is probably my biggest piece of advice.
And don't use Claude.
Don't use Claude. I'm a big fan for AI integrations in businesses to support you with rollout of things, administrative tasks. It can be incredible for that. So it can free up your time to do the big strategic thinking. It can't do the big strategic thinking for you, and it doesn't offer human insight. Human insight is what makes a brand really strong and ownable and distinctive. So that said, obviously there are a lot of businesses who are very constrained financially now and resource-wise. So I would say making any changes in the right direction is still better than doing nothing. And so to do that, there's multiple ways we could tackle it. People are going to say lowest hanging fruit and then just kick myself in the head for saying it. So, but it is, what are the things that could make the most meaningful impact for our consumers, but also not feel jarring? So we've got to think about the experience that they're having. Could a simple shift be an elevation of the content creation that we have through social, for example? won't always go and advocate for, you know, it's not always first go and change your brand identity, because maybe that's something we need to work towards. Maybe we don't know where we want to go yet. And so it's about changing things up on platforms like social, performance, email, where it's a little bit less permanent.
Talk about the two door. What's a one-way door versus a two-way door? Like,
Exactly. Yeah,
if you do it, you need to take it down, or
you
if you
can.
don't, it doesn't matter. Like,
Exactly. So I would experiment there first if I was in the position where I couldn't change everything all at once, and be really honest about how long it's going to take to change things well. Like Bets was, you know, that was a sprint of a project. We didn't start the first phase of the visual identity changes until July, and we went live in market in October. That is unheard of.
huge.
Like that would usually be a 12-month project, or maybe 6 to 8 month project to roll that out. But that was the strategic analysis would come first. And, you know, it was a lot. We wanted to get live before cyber because we knew our next opportunity wouldn't be until February. And we needed to make that meaningful change in the business sooner than then. But planning out what a timeline for change looks like, whether it be one big swing or incremental changes, is really key to getting it right too.
And getting them to invest in something that's like, okay, their costs are rising and maybe their customer base isn't growing. Getting them to invest like in new experimentations, new personas, like that sounds like it would have been a very expensive marketing, like few campaigns for them over the last year. Like, how do you convince a brand to invest in having a go when they don't really have the funds to back it up? Like, how did you do that? Or how did they even get you, when I'm assuming that they didn't have that much, I don't know, resources at the time? Like, I think on a really
Have you still got trauma around not being able to bring Willow and Blake on board for Croc in the early days?
Exactly. When we needed you the most, we couldn't.
I would love to help every business, and we've tried really hard to make packages as affordable as they could be, but there is a reality in terms of the time that it takes to do something like this well. And, you know, all you do is then compromise the final product. And so when clients come to us, we've made the mistake before where we've really shaved down the budget to help people, and then all we do is there's no profit left in the business on our end at the end of the day, and they're still not necessarily delivered what would work. So yeah, Bets was an expensive exercise. Like, I have to be so honest about that, because it was a huge, like, complete overhaul from every element: website, the insole of the shoe, the way socials are run. I brought on a new team, but I kept that team very, very lean, and repositioned existing members in the team where I could to best suit their skill set, because the version of marketing that they were doing before and version of creative was not what I needed from this next version.
Is that a big part of the brand shift, is working out what you're not going to do anymore?
Absolutely. Yep. Ruthlessly cull, also a life motto of mine. I'm not your live, laugh, love girl.
Ruthlessly cut. I like it.
You can't do everything. And brands or people that try to do everything just do a pretty average job of all of those things. So hence why, like my Substack that we talked about, I don't write it right now because I'd be writing crap. So I'd better just not do it. And then when I can, go back to it and do it well. We didn't plan every channel, for example. So we don't do anything on Pinterest. Even TikTok was secondary to Instagram because our primary audience were there. I'm like, we need to get this right first. Get this channel humming. It could be 6 months down the track that we turn our attention to TikTok. And it was, in fact, 6 months down the track that we started to turn our attention there. Yeah, if you try and do everything, you kind of miss them.
So true.
It feels like I brought up the Bouf example to so many people when you launched, because I freaking loved it. And I'm not even in your market for it, right? I just saw it everywhere and I just loved it because it was fresh. It was new. You could tell there was investment in it. That felt like you did everything at once. Or is that the perception that it feels like you're everywhere at once, but you're actually not? Like, was that a throw everything at the wall idea?
Well, I can't take credit for the way the internal team rolled that out, because that was very much the York Street Brands team. But yes, they knew that to break into a very noisy hair category where there were competitors emerging in this hair growth, niche of the hair category, go big or go home.
Yeah.
Partnering with a really key influencer, which I guess we didn't touch on in our influencer chat before, was key. Like instant eyeballs and that credibility that comes with that, building on their audiences, building on their other networks of influencers, that amplification was really, really beneficial to Bouf. But also the brand and the identity stood out because that was a time to be edgy and creative, whereas we've done a lot of hair care brands that feel a bit more refined and really polished, and they're beautiful. And it was right for their setting, but sometimes the benefit that something edgy has is that it can make that kind of immediate noise or immediate cut through on a very crowded social platform, which is what Bouf did.
Did it so well. Loved it. Loved it.
Thanks. I will pass that feedback on to the team. It was a beautiful project.
Jess, you've said that you've got a career in ideas, and I love that saying, career in ideas. So how do you plan the next 12 months for you? Obviously, Willow and Blake going gangbusters, Bets, you've still got some work to do there, and for scale launching as well. How are you positioning yourself from here as a career in ideas?
I go to whoever is screaming the loudest sometimes. That's always been the way I juggle my time. I think I'd get bored if I was just doing one thing, and I've started to really understand that about myself. I'm actually better at my job if I'm busy. It gives me kind of a bit of a momentum and energy, and I think that's come with a lot of, I used to be really hard on myself about that. Like, why can't you just focus on one thing, do it? And then I realized, being able to do multiple things and being quick at them is my superpower. So lean into that superpower, spread it across the teams, teach other people how to be like that, and or nurture their ability to just focus on one thing. So there's a lot of going between different projects and bouncing around, leading big initiatives, and then allowing the people who are better at rolling out the day-to-day to do their job without me getting in their way, and focusing on just taking everything to that next stage of growth, which means challenging ourselves creatively. It'd be really easy to rest on our laurels with Willow and Bets in particular, but now it's okay, like there's fire going, burning, like let's build on this momentum. What do we do next?
Love it. And so if we've got brands listening to you, loving what you're talking about, and they're interested in for scale, can you tell us a little bit about the ideal archetype of a brand or a business that you like working with there and how people can get involved?
We are for consumer brands in particular. I know that can feel very broad, but I don't think we're necessarily best suited to service-based businesses and B2B businesses. With my expertise is in consumer, and it's also for the founder. We've got two cohorts. So Accelerator is for founders that are startups, 0 to 500K, and then we've got our growth cohort, which is over 500K, and the curriculum is very different. Really, the ideal person is someone who's ready to learn and someone who's ready to look at their business holistically. There are amazing coaches in niche areas, and that might be what some businesses need. You're one of these great, amazing e-com coaches. Like, you do this so, so well. I would not be the person to do that. What I can help people with is when they might have some elements of their business under control, but they don't know what is wrong in all of these other areas, helping them holistically step back, learn how to prioritize, and grow a healthy long-term business with obviously a big focus on brand, because that's what I do. So Rosa would have been the perfect thing for someone like you coming in years ago if you couldn't necessarily afford Willow and Blake's full brand services. It still gives you a way to kind of tap into our knowledge, and we work really directly with our clients. So it's the weekly calls with myself and my co-founders. So it's a really nice way to get to know consumer brands too and the founders behind them. I love it.
So what you're saying is Rosa should get rid of the subscriptions to the other 3 coaching services and just join yours.
Come to us.
Done. You had me at female led, because it is, there are no females really doing it. And I think the ones who are just focused on performance marketing. And I think we're never getting off that performance drug if we don't start paying as much attention to the rest of like our brand essence and like who we are and building those connections with consumers. And
yeah, absolutely. And performance is critical, right? Like, I don't knock it. We have acknowledged several times in this conversation how important that is to be able to grow a consumer brand. It's just not the only thing.
agreed.
And really understanding the metrics behind your business and the data points that actually drive change. Having conversations about how, when, or if you should even go into retail. The same thing for international expansion, reviewing what your product line looks like. What does your organizational structure look like? They're all the types of conversations that we like to have so that people can run their business with a very holistic mindset. Maybe we should create too.
That'd be awesome. I would love that. I would learn so much from you. And I've learned so much in this conversation. I didn't imagine we'd spend so long talking about data, but it makes total sense with everything that you've done. And I think that's the fun of having this conversation. We get to understand how your brain works and the mechanisms behind what we see out in the public. Like, I'm always in awe of what you release and what we see out there, but it's so nice to have that opportunity to talk with you around all the hard work and the analysis and the thinking that goes to making those things look great in the real world.
That's really lovely. I appreciate that feedback so much. And I think it's a good takeaway for people who are looking to build careers in brand building or who have aspirations to be a CMO. If you're looking to build a career in brand or marketing, or you want to be the CMO or a founder of a business one day, you have to have a foot in both camps. And for me, I come from a creative background. I am a writer by trade who had to learn the data analysis. And then there are people who come from the other direction. You have to have, it's like the dark arts. You have to have an appreciation of both and know how to do both to eventually get that top job and do it really well. And that it's 20 years into my career to get here. But I think it's something I try and talk to all of the creatives that come through our agency. I'm like, I know you hate this now, but you have to learn how to live in a spreadsheet to do the strategic or copy or design part of your job really, really well, and vice versa. So learn to love it, baby.
Learn to love it. Such amazing advice. Thank you so much for joining us on Add to Cart, Jeff.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jess. We're pumped to see where all of this goes. And it's inspiring as well for me to see that you can still have your fingers in so many pies and still be doing them well, and acknowledge that almost forces you to end your, that you don't need to give your whole self to something. I think that's, Bushy and I were talking about that at the very start of this conversation too. We both have so much going on all the time, and it's easy to feel like you're not doing them all well. But I think your point around saying you're better at your job when you're busy, actually that gives you permission to be like, cool, I can only give a certain percentage of myself to this, and that's all it needs, and then keep moving. So yeah, I got so much value out of this as well. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Rosa. That's lovely of you to say.
What an awesome chat. Rosa, you're going to have to go and get that live, laugh, love tattoo off now.
Yeah, and just have ruthlessly cut, which was her actual life motto, which I love.
It was so good. I'm really interested in your perspective as someone who has built their own brand from the ground on up. And I know you're so passionate around creativity and around brand and how that leads to commercial outcomes. What did you take out of that conversation with Jess? What was your main thing?
There was so much to take away from that conversation. I think even though we didn't dive into it as deep as I would have liked, her touching on her playbook and how all of the problems are the same. So her playbook applies to different brands. She's across, baby brands to Bets to edgy hair care and so on. It was really interesting to hear her talk about how you really can't escape personas, and really understanding your customer and thinking about even their daily routine, getting dressed, just thinking about
or not getting dressed.
Customer naked in shoes is such a good analogy. They're not just wearing shoes. What else are they wearing, and what does that say about them, and what can we learn? So yeah, that was a really big one.
I love the talk about data, and I'll mention it in the outro there, but the level of thinking and analysis that goes into great brands is often overlooked. And that balance between being analytical and creativity is often not right brain or left lane. It's the best people can integrate both.
Did you just say right brain or left leg?
Did I?
Yeah, I like it though.
That's what it is now.
That's true. I think we've come up with a whole new terminology in this podcast today.
As well as eventing, you've learned a new word.
Honestly, that's a massive takeaway for me as well. I think this clout hunting and almost playing into FOMO for your influencer strategy IRL is going to be so important, and hearing her actually acknowledge that is really energizing to me, because I never really got behind influencer gifting because it just felt like a waste, and it also just felt like more people to manage in terms of getting the best outcomes, what you wanted, the briefing that goes into it. So hearing about this kind of hack of setting up events where you can curate the look, feel, vibe, and then selectively invite who you want there, I think that's a huge hack for our listeners today who have.
And I think it's just thinking about how you do those events, because the events aren't really events, they're content studios, right? So if you're planning events, think about how they turn into content and how they live longer and spread wider than just the event itself. That's just the playground, I suppose.
So I guess something that I wasn't expecting, which was really interesting as well, was at the start, she sort of talked and joked about not really loving managing people. And it's interesting because you look at someone like Jess, she's got opportunities coming from everywhere. She's across the biggest things that are happening in e-commerce and retail in general, I guess. And it was really interesting to then hear her just surrender to the fact that that's who she is, and she's always going to be busy, and she's never going to give 100% to anything, but actually that is what her secret sauce and her X factor is. And it just made me wonder, because, you and I are quite similar to that. Do you think you can be a founder and be good and have your foot in all of these different things and then, still be a good leader in a business? Like, what did you take from that?
I think it's a different type of people management. I think traditional people management is for a special type of person. I mean, I've done that. I've done that in corporate roles before, and they try and teach you how to be a manager. I love being a leader. I think I'm a pretty good leader, but I'm not a good manager. I'm a horrible manager. And I think there's a big difference between the two. And maybe that's what Jess was alluding to. She's a leader in brand. She's a leader in e-commerce. She's a leader in retail, but she doesn't want that day-to-day people management. I'm not sure if you feel the same there.
No, I totally agree, because to be a leader, you got to let someone lead. Whereas to manage people, what people need to be managed is like consistency. Like, you say what you're going to do, you deliver it. And I'm just not like that either. I'm like, I tell everyone my crazy ideas and then 1% of them happens, but then they follow me up and then they all of a sudden we're emotionally attached to something that I forgot I even mentioned. I feel like, then it's really hard to stay consistent. So I think that's a founder's curse, but also like X factor there. So I think it's going to be cool to see if other people relate to that for sure.
Yeah, and I think what Jess was talking about wasn't necessarily just for founders. It's for anyone in their career knowing where their strengths are and knowing what their weaknesses are as well, and trying to go towards their strengths. Because Jess has proven with a brand like Frank, she can build a big team, she can manage a large team, but it's not natural for her. So where do you naturally get your energy? Where do you naturally thrive? And, I love what she said. She wants a career in ideas. And that seems to be a great north kind of direction for her. I wish I had that clarity.
That was a really great conversation. I think someone listening to this, I hope that they've taken away from it that they really need to think about their persona as a person, not as a cohort. I hope they take away from it that events and IRL influencer marketing is going to be a really big thing to help you stay relevant and in the conversation. And then data, like, make sure that if you are an intuitive marketer, that you know where to find the data to back you up, or disqualify your idea before you look like a fool bringing it up at the table.
I like that accent. What's the accent?
I don't know. I don't know.
I want that to be a permanent fixture of future Add to Cart episodes. All right, if you enjoyed this episode and you want to know more around branding, around everything founder-led, maybe even about bad tattoo choices, come and join the Add to Cart community. We've got over 700 e-commerce professionals in there sharing ideas, asking questions every day, and brand is a key part of that. So we would love to see you in there. Rosa, thank you again for being amazing on Add to Cart.
Thanks so much, Bushy. So much fun.